My name is Christine Narkiewicz, ChristineNarkiewicz.
Okay.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Please tell the members of the jury your occupation, ma'am.
I'm a crime scene investigator with the Orange County Sheriff's Office.
Okay. How long have you been employed with the Orange County Sheriff?
A little over 3 years.
What sort of background or education do you have that qualifies you for that position with the sheriff?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Forensic Science with a minor in Chemistry from the University of Central Florida. I'm currently obtaining my Master of Science degree in Criminal Justice from the University of Central Florida, and I'll graduate in August. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 3 years, and our training program is 4 months long, where we receive extensive training in all the areas of crime scene. I have obtained over 320 hours of additional specialized training in the area of crime scene.
Okay. As of July of 2008, how long had you been employed with the sheriff at that point?
I was employed March of 2008, so.
Just a few months?
Yes.
Okay. Were you asked to assist in the collection of some evidence items by Detective Yuri Melich?
Yes, I was.
Okay. If I may approach the witness with these items, Your Honor.
You may.
Let me show you first what has been marked as HQ for identification. We have the wrong package, but tell me if you can take a look at that and tell me if that item is something that you've had contact with in the past.
No.
Not British.
No.
Nice. Let me show you some. Yes. On July 21st of 2008, were you asked to go to the Orange County Correctional Facility for the purpose of taking samples from an individual by the name of Caylee Marie Anthony?
Yes, I was.
Okay. What time did you arrive at that facility to achieve that goal?
May I refer to my report?
Will that help refresh your recollection?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, can the witness have permission to refer to the report
Yes, the witness may refer to her report. You may proceed.
for the exact times?
I arrived at the correctional facility at 21:44 hours.
Okay. What was it that you were asked to do there?
I was requested to obtain hair and buccal swab standards from Ms. Anthony.
How was that achieved?
Buccal swabs are achieved, we are provided with sterile cotton swabs. There are 2 swabs per container. And what I did, I requested Ms. Anthony to open her mouth, and I rub aggressively these 2 swabs on the interior of both sides of her cheek for the collection of cheek cells.
Okay. Now, you are demonstrating an item to the jury. That's not the actual item that you used. You're just using that as a demonstrative aid at this point.
Correct.
Okay. When you get there to the facility, you had indicated that those are sterile items that are sealed.
Yes, they are.
Okay. You also take some precaution not to transfer any of your skin cells, or?
That is correct. In obtaining buccal swab standards, I wore gloves and a mask.
Okay. All right, now if I may approach again.
You may.
I have what has been marked as IU and IV for identification. Let's start with IU. Something you recognize that package as something that you've had contact with in the past.
Yes.
And what do you recognize that to be?
These are 2 buccal swabs from the left cheek of Caylee Anthony.
Is that item currently sealed?
Yes, it is.
If you could somehow break the seal, look inside without taking the item out if possible, and tell me if the swabs that you collected are in fact contained inside.
Yes, they are.
How do you know that?
I identify my handwriting and seal on the swab box.
Same as it relates to IV for identification. Have you take a look at the exterior packaging and tell me if you recognize it as something that you've had contact with in the past.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
This has my handwriting and my initials on the seal.
What is it that is purported to be inside?
Those are 2 buccal swabs from the right cheek of Caylee Anthony.
Is that item currently sealed?
Yes, it is.
Again, if you could break that seal without taking the item out of the packaging if possible, and tell me if you recognize the item inside.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
This also has my handwriting and my seals.
Once these items are obtained, what do you do with them?
Those items were turned over to lead crime scene investigator Gerardo Bloisy.
Do you seal those prior to turning them over to another individual?
Yes.
Would you have sealed them that same evening?
I believe those have the same date as I collected them, yes.
All right. Do you need to look at the seal to tell us with certainty?
Yes. Yes, the seal on the exterior envelope is the same, July 21st, 2008.
Aside from the swabs of the cheek, did you collect any other evidence item from Caylee Marie Anthony?
Yes, I did.
Okay, what would that have been?
I was requested to also obtain hair standards from Miss Anthony.
Okay, how was that achieved?
Hair standards, according to the FBI protocol, they would like loose hair standards as well as pulled head hair standards. So I requested Miss Anthony first turn her head over and using her fingers retrieve all of the loose head hair. As her head hair fell out, it fell onto a piece of brown paper, and I I folded that up, placed that into an envelope, and then I personally pulled Miss Anthony's hair out for the pulled head hair standard.
All right. Now, the brown piece of paper that the loose hair was collected on, where does that come from?
We are supplied in our van a roll of brown paper, and I retrieved it out of my van that evening.
All right. What steps or precautions are taken to ensure that the brown paper that you are utilizing to collect this evidence is not contaminated in any way?
This brown paper is just a large roll that's placed in my van. It's only taken out when needed to be utilized.
Okay. Now, you said that you had Ms. Anthony turn her head over just to collect whatever loose hair could be obtained at that point.
Correct.
If I may approach the witness with IT for identification.
You may.
Have you take a look at that packaging and tell me if it's something you recognize as you're having had contact with in the past.
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
It has my handwriting on it and my initials on the seal with the date.
Do you also indicate on the exterior of the package what item is contained inside?
Yes, I do.
And what is this item?
These are the loose head hair standards from Miss Caylee Anthony.
You had mentioned the seal with the date. Was that item sealed by you on the date that we've been speaking of, July 21st?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you do with this item once you've collected it and placed it into the sealed package?
That was also turned over to lead investigator Gerardo Bloisy.
You mentioned pulled head hair.
Correct.
Okay. How is that done? Like it sounds?
It is. As a crime scene investigator, we're responsible for pulling head hair from multiple areas of the head.
Okay. How do you do that? With some implement?
I initially started with a pair of disposable tweezers, which are for a one-time use only, and those were not working properly, so I physically pulled them with my hands.
Okay. Were you wearing gloves?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, aside from wearing gloves, were there any other steps taken to ensure that you weren't mixing any of your hair or skin cells with this sample that you're collecting from Ms. Anthony?
If I recall, I still had my mask on.
Okay. If I may approach the witness with IS for identification.
You may.
How do you take a look at that item and tell me if you recognize it as something you've had contact with in the past?
Yes.
What do you recognize it to be?
Again, this is my handwriting, and my initials are on the seal with the date.
Do you put some indication on the exterior of the package what is contained inside?
Yes, ma'am.
And what indication have you placed on there?
These are the pulled head hairs from Miss Caylee Anthony.
You indicated that it is currently sealed. Can you tell when you sealed?
Yes, the date of July 21st of 2008 is present on the seal.
What happened after you obtained these samples and sealed the package? What happened to it?
Those were also turned over to lead investigator Gerardo Bloisy.
If I may approach the witness with JC, JD, JE, and JF
You may.
identification. Let me have you take a look at JC for identification. Tell me if you recognize that as something that you've had contact with in the past.
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize it?
This is my handwriting and my initials and date on the seal.
Do you put some indication on the exterior of the package as to what is contained inside?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
4 toothbrushes belonging to Caylee Anthony.
Were those items that you obtained from Detective Yuri Melich?
That is correct.
Did you place the item into the package and seal it?
Yes.
Does the seal indicate the date that that was done?
Yes. July 28th, 2008 is on the seal.
Let me show you JD for identification. Tell me if you recognize that as something that you've had contact with in the past.
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
This also has my handwriting and my initials and date on the seal.
Did you put some indication on the exterior of the package as to what item is contained inside?
Yes, I did.
And what is it?
1 brush belonging to Caylee Anthony.
Is this also an item that you obtained from Detective Yuri Melich?
Yes, it is.
Does your seal appear on the exterior?
Yes.
Did you initial and date that seal as well?
Yes, I did.
Right. And what date did you seal this?
July 28th, 2008.
Let me show you JE for identification. Tell me if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
What do you recognize it to be?
This is 1 comb belonging to Caylee Anthony.
Comb? I'm sorry,
Yes, 1 comb.
comb. How do you recognize that?
This has my handwriting, my initials, and the date on my seal.
Is that an item that you obtained from Detective Yuri Melich?
Yes, it is.
Okay. What date is reflected on your seal on this package?
July 28th, 2008.
And finally, JF for identification. Do you recognize that item?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
This has my handwriting, my initials, and the date on the seal.
Do you put some indication on the front of the package as to what is contained inside?
Yes, I did.
And what is it?
1 thermometer belonging to Caylee Anthony.
Is this an item that you retrieved or received from Detective Yuri Melich?
Yes, it is.
Did you place that item into that packaging and seal it?
Yes, I did.
Does the seal reflect the date that you accomplished that?
Yes, July 28th, 2008.
Do you recognize the individual in the courtroom from whom you obtained the cheek swabs and hair, pulled and loose hair samples?
Yes, I do.
Application for these purposes.
Okay.
State accepts stipulation.
We will accept the stipulation that the samples that this witness has testified to belong to the defendant, Caylee Marie Anthony.
The record will so indicate.
I have no other questions of this witness, Your Honor. Thank you.
Cross-examination.
May I please court? Mr. Burdick. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Now, you testified that you wore gloves when collecting a DNA sample. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's to protect basically from any epithelial cells that may transfer?
Any type of cross-contamination.
Exactly. And that would include even secondary transfer, would that not? Meaning, if you had touched something that had somebody else's DNA, you could also transfer that DNA to whatever sample you were collecting.
I suppose.
Okay. And you obviously take extraordinary precautions when collecting DNA.
Correct.
And that is because of the extreme sensitivity of DNA and its ability to transfer.
Correct.
And you also wore a mask.
Yes, sir.
And the reason you wear a mask is so you also don't get any further DNA on whatever sample it is that you're collecting.
Correct.
And in fact, you take these precautions. Well, let me actually strike that and say, in fact, while collecting DNA, you don't even speak, do you?
For the most part, we try not to.
And the reason you don't try to speak is because even while speaking, you could contaminate samples.
That's true.
And there have been tremendous advances in DNA, and that's why you take these precautions.
I don't know if it's because of the advancements. We just don't want to cross-contaminate any evidence we collect.
Well, you're aware now that that you don't need tons of blood or anything like that to get DNA on something, right?
Okay.
And you're also aware that low copy number DNA, you're aware with that concept? Familiar with that concept?
Basic concepts?
Yes.
Yes, I'm not a DNA analyst.
I understand. But in the process of collecting DNA, you're also aware of touch DNA.
Correct.
And that's when you touch an item, and that item would contain some type of DNA.
Potentially.
Correct? Potentially, yes. And the packaging that you use, it specifically, you have certain procedures as to the packaging, because that way it could preserve the DNA.
The DNA that's inside them, yes.
Preserve the integrity of the sample.
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And in fact, if properly packaged, we can go back 20 years later and still be able to collect that DNA potentially.
If the sample's still there, yes. If it hasn't been utilized, the whole thing.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor. Thank you.
May the witness be excused.
You may.
Thank you, ma'am. You may be excused.